Left in the Shadows. Written by Manda. Read by Arashi.
10 seconds!
Ashe clenched his teeth and ran down the home stretch of the obstacle course, feeling energized by the cheers from his classmates. He was so close, just a little further.
Go, Ashe, go! You've got this!
With a final push of adrenaline, he crossed the finish line.
Time!
Ashe collapsed to the floor of the training grounds, gasping for breath as his heart pounded in his chest. He did it. Or he hoped he did anyway. When he transferred to the Golden Deer, he hadn't expected to go through such rigorous training exercises. "Claude'll run you through some practice drills," the professor had said. "I don't doubt your training thus far, but it will be good for him as your house leader to note your strengths and weaknesses as well." Some drills, Ashe thought, panting. More like modern torture. Though he felt someone like Felix would enjoy a challenge such as this. He rolled onto his back, quiver and what few arrows remained in it sliding off his shoulder, and closed his eyes against the sunlight. Ashe heard his new classmates milling around, starting to clean up the training grounds and eventually continue on with the rest of their free day. He couldn't wait to head to the bathhouse himself. Once he felt well enough to stand, that is. A shadow crossed over him, blocking the sun, and he opened his eyes. Squinting against the light, he recognized Claude looming over him. His new house leader extended a hand. "Not bad, Ashe," he said with an easy smile. "That's gotta be a new Golden Deer record." "Thanks," Ashe huffed. He took Claude's proffered hand and got to his feet, the dirt beneath him lurching. He lost his balance and fell into Claude's chest. "Easy there," Claude laughed, setting him upright. "We hardly know each other." Ashe flushed and stepped away hurriedly. "Right, sorry about that." Claude quirked his eyebrows. Oh, that was a joke. Ashe hadn't been able to get a read on his new house leader yet. Prince Dimitri was always formal and straightforward, and Claude was not. He always seemed to be hiding something, even in casual moments. It was unsettling, in a way. He followed Claude over to the sideline of the archery range and took a seat on the short retaining wall that separated it from the rest of the grounds. Claude handed him a water skin, and Ashe drank gratefully, cool water running down his chin. It was refreshing, and even more so after such hard training. "I'll talk to Teach about it, but we might want to increase your draw weight soon. See if we can't get a little more distance out of your shots," Claude said, taking a seat next to him, close enough their legs touched. "Not that there's anything wrong with your distance now, because there isn't, but I think you could be lethal from the back ranks of a battalion." Ashe nodded and took another sip of water. He'd been wondering the same, actually, and he was impressed Claude thought so too. Plus, becoming more of a distance fighter would likely keep him out of the heat of any real battle. "Your form is impeccable," Claude continued, both casual and calculating, and Ashe beamed. "You could probably teach me a thing or two. Who taught you how to shoot?" The question caught him off guard, his face falling. "Oh, my brother. Well, my adopted father's son. I mean, Lenato, right?" Ashe flinched. It had been a few moons since the encounter at Magdred Way, but the pain still felt fresh and raw sometimes. "Lenato was my adopted father, yes. His son was Christoph. I call him my brother because he never really made me feel like we were anything less." A sad and bittersweet look fell across Ashe's face. "The church arrested him at our home in Gaspard. I saw the whole thing." He remembered it like it was yesterday. They were walking back from the stables, having just finished taking care of the few horses Lenato had, when they caught sight of the armed cadre of riders on horseback, thundering toward the manor. Christoph stepped in front of Ashe protectively. "Stay behind me, Ashe," he said. Ashe stood directly behind his brother and gripped his tunic, a small show of camaraderie. The riders came to a stop a few meters away. Their flags bore the crests of Seros, their armor bright white and shining in the sun. It was unmistakably the knights. One rider seemed to look through the two boys, as though she didn't want to see them. "Christoph Gaspard?" the lead knight inquired. Christoph stood tall and defiant, every bit a noble son. "Yes? You are under arrest for treason against the royal family and conspiracy to commit crimes against the Holy Church of Seros." Ashe gasped, and Christoph clenched a fist. "Impossible! I've committed no such acts." Two of the knights dismounted and began to approach them, one carrying iron manacles in their hands. You need to come with us." They stood at a stalemate. The knights didn't advance, and Kristoff didn't move. The tension was like a thick fog. "Ashe," his brother started, eyes not leaving the contingent of knights before them. "Run to the house and get father." But, Chris—" "Go, Ashe! Please!" Ashe hesitated a moment more, glancing between his brother and the knights, before letting go of the fabric and running toward the manor. Lenato was coming down the stairs as he approached, having seen the riders in the distance as well. "Lenato!" he panted. The knights! The knights are here to arrest Kristoff!" Lenato's face was grim as he continued towards his son. "Go inside, Ashe," he said, waving towards the manor. "I'll take care of this." Just then they heard a scuffle, and Ashe turned to see a knight shove Kristoff to the ground. Lenato took off running, Ashe following close behind. Kristoff struggled, but the knights restrained him, the manacles closing around his wrists with a clang. Ashe wasn't sure what was happening. Lenato was shouting as the knights picked Kristoff off the ground and led him towards a horse at the back of the group. "Chris!" Ashe called out, and ran towards his brother, even as his adopted father yelled for him to come back. 2 more knights stepped forward to block his path with their lances. He looked between them, eyes wide and full of questions and unshed tears. "It'll be okay, Ashe," Kristoff said, drawing his attention. Ashe met his gaze, oddly calm with no trace of fear. "It'll be okay. This is just a misunderstanding. It's a little scary, but he needs you to be brave, all right? Just like a knight from the books. Can you do that for me?" Ashe stiffened, but nodded, and Kristoff smiled. "Father will take care of everything, and I'll be back before you know it." Break. "They took him away, and he never came back." Ashe and Claude sat in silence for a while, the weight of Ashe's disclosure sitting heavy between them. It was a moment before Claude broke the silence. "So, what made you switch classes?" Ashe shrugged, grateful for the change of subject. "It was the professor's idea." Claude chuckled. "Yeah, okay. But why did you switch?" Ashe turned to look at Claude. His verdant eyes betrayed no motive to his question, but Ashe knew he wasn't asking out of pure curiosity. "I have questions," he answered finally, "about the Western Church, my adoptive father and brother. Nothing makes sense." He didn't know why he was telling Claude all this, or why Claude would even care, but he continued anyway. "Lenato Lenato was a good man, and I stand by that even now. Kristoff, too. He shook his head vehemently. I don't believe Chris would commit treason against the royal family, and the church overstepped their authority by executing him without an investigation or a trial." Ashe remembered the tense days after Kristoff's arrest, how Lenato left him and his siblings in the care of House Rowe while he went to confront the knights and the church himself, how they waited and waited for any word or for their return, how Lenato came back, alone, sullen and heartbroken, ashamed there was nothing he could do to save his son. "I don't know how deep his hatred for the church ran," he whispered guiltily. For 3 years, Lenato's anger had simmered, and he'd expertly hidden it from Ashe. "If only I'd known. Maybe I could have prevented this." "Or you could have been another casualty," Claude countered. Ashe turned to argue, but Claude held up his hands. "I don't mean that callously, Ashe. But think about it. If you hadn't come to the academy, the more likely scenario is that Lenato would have had you take up arms for his cause too. I think he was protecting you. In his own way." Ashe thought about that. He owed Lenato a huge debt, one that he can't repay, and if he'd asked for Ashe to stand for this cause, Ashe would have, with little question. "I suppose," he conceded. "Even so, I wish he'd trusted me. I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than meets the eye." He paused. "Anyway, I don't think I can find my answers in Fargus, if at all." They sat in silence once more. For a moment, Ashe wondered if he had said too much, if Claude would go to the professor, or Sedith, or, goddess forbid, Lady Rhea herself, and tell them that he was questioning the church, that maybe Ashe was a heretic. He was about to recant everything he'd just said, and tell Claude to forget the whole conversation, when Claude spoke again. "I heard some of the knights talking. Something about another extremist faction of the Western Church." Ashe cocked his head, and his ears perked up. The Western Church! Members of the church that had conspired with Lenato, maybe even instigated the revolt. And they'd recovered a letter after the Battle of Magdred Way that hinted at a plot to assassinate Lady Rhea. "I guess one of their bishops is a real piece of work. Lady Rhea plans to ask Teach to be your escort while the knights take care of their unfinished business, which means we'll," Claude waved his hand between them, "be her escort, and be able to take care of some business of our own. Maybe we'll be able to help you find some answers. Or, at least, get closure." Answers. Closure. Claude stood and stretched, his serious tone replaced instantly by the aloof easiness everyone knew. "In any case, we're glad you're here, Ashe. You're a golden dear now." He tossed Ashe a wink and a wave over his shoulder, and sauntered towards the exit. Ashe sat alone on the wall for a while after Claude left, wondering about this new extremist faction of the Western Church, and adding to the ever-growing list of questions he had about his house leader. The end.